Taming the Demon by Almi Levskiro. Chapter 13 to Raw Diamond. Warning. This chapter contains adult content, so to maintain the PG-13 rating of this chapter, I have excluded that part and rewritten it as best I can. To read the chapter in its entirety, please visit the link in the descriptions. The days passed, quickly and routinely. The team would get up at dawn, get as far as they could in the span of 24 hours, and then collapse delirious with exhaustion and sleep for 12 to 18 hours and relax for the remaining time until they had to repeat the process. True to their promise, Demon and Ice Shield had been helping the kid with his training. As such, the kid was full of energy when he told Hiruma that he had figured out how to break without slowing down. The blonde knew that the figuring out part was all Sena as well. He tripped on a crack. There's no way it wasn't him. The captain grinned at him and ruffled his hair like he did with Ice Shield, then tugged him behind the truck and out of Onizaki's sight. Sitting the kid down, the blonde started wrapping ice packs around the boy's knees, explaining that he'll run as much interference as possible between the running back and manager, so that she won't notice the ice packs. But the brat should probably get on the truck and under a blanket so he can keep them on all night. Sena smiled shyly at him and thanked him, but when he moved to stand, his knees buckled and gave away completely. Sighing dramatically, the blonde picked up his running back bridle style and maneuvered them both onto the truck bed. After carefully setting the brunette down, making sure to mind the knees, Hiruma mentioned he had to back for his gun. It was an excuse to go deal with his own aches and injuries. He was back shortly, and by now everyone else was also on the truck settling into sleep. The space next to Sena was still suspiciously empty, even though he's usually surrounded on all sides. But the blonde didn't exactly care about the whys or the hows. But he knew that neither he nor Sena was going to complain about sleeping in such close quarters that night. Sure enough, the kid didn't make a sound when Hiruma wriggled his way right up against Sena so that their backs were pressed together. The captain assumed the kid must have had some kind of full-body blush going on, if the abnormally high body temperature was anything to go by. The blonde rolled over so he was almost spooning the boy and held his wrist to the kid's forehead, making some quiet remark about not getting sick until they reached Vegas. Of course, the moment their skin came into contact, the brat's blush deepened even further. Somebody's breathing had changed. Someone had woken up. In a matter of microseconds, the blonde had triangulated the sound to its person of origin and found himself giving a rather harsh bite to the brunette under him because, of course, it was that fucker Jimunji who woke up! It took about a second for Hiruma to decide what to do. Read the most efficient option to keep the lineman quiet and carry on with his activities involving Sena. And with a little sleight of hand, he managed to get the brunette's arms wrapped around his shoulders as he went in for that kiss. The conniving strategist knew that the former delinquent had a decent view of what was going on and reveled in such a situation because everything about Sena's body language said he was thoroughly enjoying this, so the muscled blonde had no right or reason to interrupt. The captain looked out of the corner of his eye and met Jumonji's stare, smirking when the lineman sighed in what could only be submission and rolled over so that he didn't have to watch. Victory! It didn't take much longer for them to finish, his last whimper swallowed by his upperclassman's lips. The older teen released the boy and cleaned them both off with tissues pulled out of his bag. Sena had an odd look on his face and kept fidgeting. He wanted to ask something, probably a few things, but Hiruma just smirked and told him to go to sleep. The blonde would let him know when he could return the favor. Of course, it wasn't long before Demon came along looking for trouble, and Ice Shield shortly after. Sena himself never took the initiative, but the quarterback knew he wanted to play on the nights he kept an empty space next to where he slept. The eldest brother never bothered them again. The blonde found his routine changing slightly as his escapades started to cycle through the three personas. He never outright fucked the boy. Any of him, because it would be extremely detrimental to his training, and the boy would be suffering enough with the condition of his knees. He started realizing that his attachment to the kid had grown significantly shortly after they hit San Antonio. Everyone had been grateful for the chance to shower and sleep in an actual bed, and Hiruma got a substantial amount of pleasure from the blush on Sena's face after seeing his upperclassmen come out of the showers shirtless. Never get bored of teasing the shrimp. It was during the next day's run that the blonde discovered the nagging sense of something is wrong rang true. Checking over his shoulder, he noticed that the shorty, who had been so close behind them for the last few days, was nowhere to be found. It was only from years of practice that he kept his cool, but he couldn't shake the thought that something terrible had happened, and they were leaving an easily frightened child with multiple personality disorder stranded in a strange place with a strange language, even though the blonde had told him that the second year would take responsibility for him, promised it to all three of them. Needless to say, when the brat finally called him, the quarterback was not happy, but the anger didn't make it any easier to stifle with the relief he felt that the boy was perfectly fine, if a little lost. The kid caught up easily enough, but for some reason brought an idiot and a girl with him. Hiruma allowed the Taki siblings to run with them on the off chance that Natsuhigo, on second thought, he's just Taki, could be a passable tight end. Suzuna might as well play cheerleader while she was here. The blonde walked away from the campfire, shortly followed by his running back. Around the side of the truck, they stopped and looked at each other. Sena took 1, 2, 3 steps forward. Hiruma reached out and drew him in the rest of the way. The blonde wrapped his arms around the first year's smaller body and rested his forehead on the kid's shoulder. He practically growled that if the brat ever tried something like this again, he would be handcuffed to the captain for the rest of his life. The boy's arms came up to encircle the blonde's neck. I missed you too, Hiruma-san.